What's your final takeaway from what we saw in the Swamp?
I'm glad you made that distinction because I thought we were talking about College Station. Which game were we talking about? Yeah, that game, I'll say this, I was surprised because we were talking about this last week, same time, that I just knew that it was going to be a decisive, convincing win by Alabama going away, and Florida would be kind of chasing the margin of victory in the back end. You know, the Gators were far more physical along the line of scrimmage than I ever anticipated their being capable of being. The ground game was much more successful than I thought it would be, absent Anthony Richardson. Even with Anthony Richardson, frankly, if he came out and they said, hey, we overblew this whole idea that his hamstring was that injured, turns out he's feeling great, I still was surprised at how effective they were. A 99-yard drive, for them to have put that together, for the Gators to put that together versus an Alabama defense, to drive literally the length of the field and climb into that ball game and be a two-point conversion away from tying it, they showed much more mettle than I thought they would have. And coming into the year, knowing who they were a season ago offensively and so pass-centric with the two Kyles and Van Jefferson and others, for them to flip the switch the way that they have and have success in the ground game, that's just really impressive. It's not a total reinvention, but to be able to have pivoted away so hard from the run and then now to go back to it offensively, that was surprising, and take nothing away from the defensive performance as well, although I feel like that was aided somewhat by the fans in the stands. And Dan Mullen asked for it on Nation. Y'all were there, and they showed up. They showed up big, and they no doubt influenced not the outcome, but how that game unfolded. There's no question in my mind that they impacted the game.
I'm just curious. I want to go to Alabama and think about how does that happen? I mean, I realize that there's a lot of enthusiasm and you're feeling it, but how does that translate to success, especially when you're playing Alabama?
Well, I think, part of it was procedurally in watching them, and they've had issues with this in the past. In fact, I think they were talking about it today, that their offensive procedure was disrupted because of the fans. But the other piece of it, too, is I think it's a function of what last year was like, where these players were operating almost in a vacuum. And I don't want to overstate it, but you know, we're talking about 20% capacity. That's nothing, especially in these cavernous stadiums. And so the ability to communicate to where coaches were literally just kind of, hey, let's try this right quick. I mean, that's not close to being possible this year, and especially in an environment like that one, where I feel like J.T. Daniels had a great quote with having played at Southern California, and he said, I didn't really understand home field advantage or something to that effect until I got to the SEC on a third down. And it wasn't just like that on third down on Saturday in Gainesville, Florida. It was like that from kickoff to the final whistle. And it does make it difficult. And you got a new guy in there at quarterback and new faces up there along the offensive front, including at center, where 5 yards in a game that was played the way that it was, 5 yards is really meaningful. And I feel like the Gator fans and faithful, they made their presence felt and actually almost had the outcome that they were seeking, I think, because of their influence.
So let's flip it around and look at Alabama. And I've heard a lot of fans say, well, it's a good thing they had that first half or they would have lost the game. Well, I mean, the game does go 4 quarters. Yeah. But just take us through the game and what you observed from Alabama and what happened, if you indeed think anything happened other than Florida turning it on.
Yeah, I think part of it was a function of we've talked about up to this point how well that they've been able to accommodate the defection of talent that happens to every college team, but especially Alabama and especially offensively. And we have to now look back, especially after what happened on Saturday with Miami at home. Is Alabama as far along offensively as we maybe would have thought that they were based on the games that have been played to date? And that opener and whatever Miami was ranked in the preseason, I can't even remember. It doesn't matter. At the time, it was, man, this wasn't just a good victory. This was a blowout of what was a ranked team. So I'm not trying to say that Alabama isn't good on offense. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that it's easy with only 3 games and with what was thought to be a ranked team in week 1 to get a false positive on a unit that really, in reality, if we're looking at it, it's unreasonable to think that they would have been functioning at the level that they perceivedly were. And I'm not trying to dismiss Florida and the fact that there was a defense on the field and there was a Florida offense on the field. But I do think there was a function of coming on the heels of a quiet, insulated type of environment a season ago. And then you throw those new faces in, and then you're facing not only a talented opponent, which clearly Florida is, I think, more capable than I certainly gave them credit for, but in an environment where it isn't conducive for success for you. All of a sudden, maybe some of the confidence, maybe some of the momentum that was established in 3 games that weren't that great, or 2 games rather that weren't that impressive looking back. I'm not going to say it was an exposure, but I do think that it probably revealed some things where this offense still has some things to realize. And that's not to ignore the defensive struggles where you're sitting there thinking, if you can't get off the field with a 99 yards worth to defend, that's an issue, especially with the defensive-minded coach. I feel certain that will be addressed thoroughly this week.
What's the most glaring issue that you saw from a defensive standpoint?
Well, there was a couple things. More than anything, the third downs, where you think you have to find a way to get off of this football field. I don't know that if I were to snap a chalk line and say, you know what, this is the issue. Going back to the line of scrimmage, I was surprised. Now, and I hearken back to week 1 where all of a sudden Bama's dropping some players and you lose your outside linebacker opposite Anderson, and you're sitting there going, you know what? And I'm up here going, oh, there's shark teeth. There's just another one just like them. There's a reason why a guy's out there first. And it's not just talent level. And that's not to say they don't have another guy that can step in. But I do have to wonder that there's some level of attrition, sure. And to credit Florida, who clearly was concerted in their effort.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.